So this week's episode of Magus' Bride is a very interesting thing, because at the very beginning of this series we get introduced to our main character Chise, and we learn that she essentially lives a cursed life because she is a slave beggy, an untrained magical force that just eats away at her body because she can't control what her body does, but if trained properly could be an amazing asset for anyone in the magical field. Later in the series, we learn that she has an emotional scar that you could also consider a curse, which Chise definitely does, as she explains in this episode, because of what her mother did to her back when she was a child. But for the first time in her life, this week, another curse is put on her. But this is a curse that she willingly takes on because she wants to save a friend. That friend being the dragon who is run rampaging down the street, burning the city down, and she takes it upon herself not to take any chances, not to take any risks about what could happen to this dragon if she waits for Elias and Ruth to catch back up to her. She inherits the magical force from this dragon and ultimately puts a curse on her life, changing her arm into a dragon arm, but essentially putting her life on lockdown here. Essentially, she might only have a couple of weeks, maybe a couple of months to live, because of what she did. But what makes this such an amazing moment is because Chise says it. It's just another curse. I've already had 2 curses all this time, but for the first time, she puts a curse on her life willingly because it ended up helping out someone that she cared for. And I love that moment because this is Chise taking things in her own hands. Yes, she's kind of like rash and foolish, but she did what she thought was best. Maybe she wasn't thinking with her mind, but she thought with her heart, and ultimately probably saved her friend, because if they waited any longer, possibly they might have had to kill the dragon, or maybe they could have got back on the dragon and Elias could have extracted the magic from Chise and saved her, but was she willing to take that risk? Absolutely not. This is Chise we're talking about, and I absolutely love that moment. But I think what's very interesting is with the idea of this curse and it being put on her life, essentially giving her now a time span of how long she can live. The reaction to Elias is very interesting, which makes total sense, especially if you've been paying attention to the second core of the Magus' Bride. Elias is pissed off, because in Elias' mind, even though he knew she's a slave beggy and that her life is fragile, he always convinced himself that she would live in that house forever and she would just always be by his side. And now Chise took this upon herself to essentially get her killed, and he's pissed off. But then he's also sad because, you know, this is the girl that constantly tells him to come back home, stop running away, but she constantly tries running away, but she's the one who always grabs his hand. And I love that moment with Ruth, Elias, and Chise, and they're all sitting on that little wall there, and essentially it was the most heartbreaking but beautiful thing all at the same time, because they agree, like, you know, we have to figure something out, and no matter what Chise, you have to take me with you. And I love that. It's so powerful, and you really see the growth over these 20 weeks. Chise even admits, you know, at the beginning of this relationship, we both were using the other. Chise was using Elias just as a way to have somewhere to call home, somewhere where she could at least feel like she had a place to be, even if it was fake. Elias was using Chise at the beginning as just an experiment, more or less, but over these 20 weeks, we have seen growth and development beyond reason here, and we just, that scene just says it all, how much they care about each other. And I think it's very, very interesting. The fact of the matter is, it seems like the only way that Chise could live is essentially joining this organization, which is essentially just a group of witches. Because seriously, if witches in this series are anything like the general folklore, it would make sense that witches would be the ones who could deal with curses that mages and sorcerers couldn't. And the fact of the matter is, very early on in this series, we learn that sorcerers and mages despise one another. So how bad is the relationship between sorcerers, mages, and witches? I feel like witches would be even worse off in favor. Like, I think a sorcerer and a mage would probably rather have a cup of tea together than have a cup of tea with a witch. That's just my assumption, and probably why Elias was so, like, screw off when she offered Chise to join her organization. I'm going to be interested to see what's going to happen, because if you watch the preview for next week, essentially it says, you know, in order to save a life, another life has to be offered. It's something along that nature. And how the episode ends, the big bad villain of the series essentially says, how interesting, I'm cursed and I can never die, and Chise has a curse that's going to kill her. So it almost feels to me like they're setting up the possibility, is the curse going to be exchanged in some way? Like, Chise going to inherit immortality, and maybe the big bad villain's going to inherit this curse? Like, maybe there's something going on here that we're building up to, that either both of the curses are going to be lifted, or maybe they're going to be exchanged. But it just feels like, based on the preview and that end scene, it definitely seems like there's a possibility of some sort of an exchange that could happen. But really, this series could go in so many ways, only time will tell. But the idea of Chise taking upon the curse for herself is so natural, especially seeing all the development for her, finally feeling accepted in this world, having people care about her and need her. she of course is not going to abandon this dragon even for a minute, and of course she's willing to take on that burden, and of course she didn't fully think it through because it is Chisei, and I love how she calls herself a stupid puppy in this episode. It was pretty funny, but this episode was pretty funny at the end of the day. Even with all the powerful moments in it, there was quite a few comedic moments, especially when Chisei first woke up and her reaction. I just adored it overall. But seriously, this episode just showcasing the brilliant development between Chisei and Elias. That scene on the wall there was just absolutely fantastic. I love how they both admit their relationship may have started on fake terms, but they both care about each other so damn much, and you really see just how much they care for one another. And if Chisei has to go, Elias wants to go with her, and I hope the whole idea of the witches is going to work out for her. I expect there's going to be some hidden catches in this organization, but ultimately, how this is going to wrap up here in the next 4 weeks, very excited to see where they're going to go. Seriously, the voice acting and just the animation as well, when the dragon was breathing fire and all the magical elements were at play here, definitely looked insanely good here. And like I said, I thought the comedy was actually really good this week. Some of the comedy is a hit or a miss, but this episode I found it to be pretty funny when they used it. Just overall, seriously, the Magus' Bride never ceases to amaze me here. Seriously, phenomenal episode. I definitely think this is going to be one of the standout episodes for the series when the series does conclude in about a month here. Let me know your thoughts. What did you think of this insane episode, the third curse that Chisei inherited, and what was your favorite moment? Let me know down in that comment section below. And before I leave, smack that like button, share your support. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.